Namaste and greetings. I, Srishti Stuti, researcher at IMPRI, Impact and Policy Research Institute, Prabhav एवं नीति अनुसंधान संस्थान नई policy learning. Today marks the final day of ending gender-based violence challenges and
Your voice is breaking, Stuti.
national
Your voice is breaking.
program of Indian Association of Women Studies, former professor of Practice Mumbai, and visiting professor at IMPRI. The conveners for the program are
Hello, Priyanka. Can you take over?
Yes, ma'am.
Professor Komatri Devi, visiting professor at IMPRI, Dr. Simi Mehta, CEO and editorial director at IMPRI, and Dr. Arjun Kumar, director at IMPRI, New Delhi. Proceeding further, I heartily welcome you all to the third cohort of Ending Gender-Based Violence, Challenges and Responses. Your valuable time, energy, and contributions toward addressing and engaging with this critical challenge are sincerely appreciated. We have also shared the course outline and reading resources via email for your reference and perusal. Before we start today's session, here are the housekeeping rules. It is imperative that you join the meeting on time. There will be a Q&A session after each presentation. Share your questions in the Q&A box and not in the chat box. The questions must not be posted as an anonymous attendee. Ensure that your questions are precise. Refrain from making general comments in the question to save time. Without further ado, I would now like to invite our chair, Professor Vibhuti Patel, for her opening remarks.
Thank you, Stuti, for introducing the course. And today we are on the last day, that means day 8 of the IMPRI Gender Impact Studies Center, a course on ending gender-based violence, challenges and responses. First of all, I would like to express my heartfelt thanks to Dr. Arjun Kumar, Dr. Simi Mehta, Priyanka Neki, the conveners and also coordinators, Ms. Priyanka Neki, Vaishali Singh, and Satyam Tripathi. And today's moderator should be Shruti. And experts, I welcome experts Dr. Bhate-Deosthali and our veteran feminist Jaya Velankar, who will be giving a valedictory address. And after that, we will have a feedback from the participants. A brief recap of what all has transpired in the previous 7 days. We began with this day 1 with an overview on gender-based violence and the campaigns and contribution of women's rights movement globally as well as in India. Keynote address was given by Adv Flavia Agnes, who profiled efforts of the women's movement since 1980 with a special focus on changes and reforms in the rape law and DV Act, Protection of Women from Domestic Violence Act, and also PCPNDT Act. And the whole process is she explained, and step by step, how do we, first of all, aim at legal reforms and how do we ensure accountability and judicious implementation of all these laws. On day 2, we had Dr. Keerthi, who herself a survivor of domestic violence of nearly 7 years, and how from a victim she became a survivor, and from survivor she became a change agent. And she says that this whole movement against gender-based violence is a new renaissance. So, and this is the renaissance for gender equality. And she gave a detailed profile of her organization called Vasavya Mahila Mandal, which was founded by her by 3 women, including by her mother. And she showed a very good, like all the process documentation of her organization's work. She also said that it is very important to work with men, and it is not only enough to just do hand-holding for the legal battle, but we need to provide physical, emotional, economic, and psychological support, and also support in terms of rebuilding the life and the livelihood. And that's what her organization has been doing. Out of 840 volunteers, Vasavya Mahila Mandal has 80 volunteers who are men. And she also said that she ended her very passionate speech with a quotation of Mahatma Gandhi. And it goes like, it is good to swim in the waters of tradition, but to sink in them is suicide. So she said, we have to be rooted in our culture, but whatever are the misogynist practices or practices which are prejudicial against women and girls and the gender minorities, we need to not only oppose, but we also need to bring alternatives. Dr. Albertina Almeida's presentation on sexual harassment at workplace, and she herself is a pioneer in India when it comes to bringing up campaigning and taking up individual cases of sexual harassment at workplace, both as a lawyer and as a feminist activist. And she also played a very important role in drafting the sexual harassment at workplace prevention law way back in 1990, when actually the Vishaka Directive came in 1997, and for which also she had played a very important role. She provided nuanced understanding of some of the landmark cases in this area. She spoke about Babri Devi's gang rape in 1992, Rupan Dev Bajaj, who was on her official mission, and DGP Arjuna Award recipient. He sexually harassed her in public view, and Nirbhaya tragedy, and how she applauded Justice Verma Committee's report. And also she said that now POSH Act, as under the Bharatiya Nyaya Samhita, is also now has made the prevention, prohibition, and redressal. And there have been several reforms also in 2016 and 2018. Even the third-party intervention is now allowed after Mehta Kotwal case, public interest litigation. And then we had day 4, we had Yagna Parmar, who spoke about empowering adolescent voices, pathways to address systemic and structural violence, which was the initiative of Vacha. And she highlighted natal violence, what are the kinds of systemic, structural, and violence in the family that took place against girls, and also importance of sensitizing boys, because in Vacha, it is the brothers who have defended their sisters' education and fought against their child marriage. We also had a very important presentation by Dr. Indira Chakravarty, who spoke on campaign against pre-birth elimination of girls, and she shared her findings of the witness seminar which she had organized. It was a day-long exercise where all those who were participants of the campaign against sex-selective abortions were invited. There were doctors, there were social activists, there were trade unionists, there were nurses who had played pivotal role in bringing this new law. They were invited for a day-long witness seminar, and she gave a whole chronological trajectory of the processes that went into building this tempo against sex-selective abortion right from 1970s to 2024. And she ended with a range of concerns, whether we are not becoming anti-abortionists by asking for sex-selective abortion. What about women's right to abortion? Women getting penalized, so some of for visiting diagnostic center, or the regulations for medical practitioners and the opposition that we have got from the diagnostic centers. So these are still very important concerns that we have. And she ended with the whole question of commercialization of medical healthcare ecosystem, and she made a very profound statement that said, from a visible murder to sensitized to sanitized elimination of girls. So earlier there was female infanticide. Now we have a sanitized elimination of girls by highly trained medical professionals who exploited patriarchal social values for commercial gains through sex tests. And then we had we had a presentation by Dr. Advocate Celine Thomas, who is a practicing lawyer in Bangalore, Karnataka High Court. And she spoke about the acid attacks on women and what are the social, legal, and medical implications and the lifelong damage which the acid attack does. It's not only disfiguring of the body and face, but also the permanent scar it leaves in your heart and in your mind, and the series of 30, 40 operations that you have to undergo your whole life the best years of your life get channelized only for your medical services. On day 5, we had Ms. Anuradha Kapoor, who spoke on the support services to the survivor of violence against women, based on her experience as the director of Swayam, where she, and now as a feminist activist who is doing lot of networking also. And she also talked about the the accountability of the system and sensitization of the masses, which is very important. And she also showed some 30 seconds films, which are giving the positive image of the people's response or the civil society response or men's response to gender-based violence, which was very, very inspiring. After that, we had a representation by Soneha Khandapal, who spoke about the trafficking of women and children. She gave the whole demographics of trafficking. So, which are the hotspots of trafficking? What kind of trafficking takes place in the name of customs and tradition? She gave case studies of her experience in Rajasthan with Bechara and certain tribal communities like Beria or Bachara communities. And she also says that even after the law, which would quote unquote rescue the survivors, the secondary victimization of the survivors of trafficking happens in terms of labeling, trauma, complex post-traumatic stress disorder. And we need to have a psychosocial model, and that has to be community-based model as against the biomedical model to provide support. So it's not only the shelter home and aftercare homes, but also the mental health issues also need to be taken up. On day 6, we had Dr. Amar Chisani, who spoke on the role of health professionals and services in combating violence against women and girls. And he talked about his own sensitization as a medical person with a medical degree, MBBS degree, and who was into medical anthropological research, how he got into the question of violence against women and what he learned from the feminist movement. And he also spoke about glaring gaps in implementation of rape laws despite 40 years of effort, where he quoted a recently published article by Dr. Lakshmi Lingam and team. He concluded his power pack presentation with the statement that public healthcare system has its potential to contribute a lot to prevent violence, but as of now, it is part of a problem. Hence, extreme punishment in the law is not going to help when the system is not working properly. Then we had a presentation by Professor Veena Vaswani, who spoke of the duty of mental health care professional in support of survivor of gender-based violence. She, as a forensic doctor who had been witness to so many cases of gender-based violence, both survivors as well as those who were murdered, and she saw massive misogyny and insensitivity and the prejudicial attitude which resulted in victim blaming. And she said that her Center for Ethics is very proactively working on bringing new SOPs, and also she ended with a need for gender concerns in medical education. Yesterday, or day 7, we had very important presentation, much neglected area of action against violence and discrimination against women and girls with disability by Dr. Anand Pan and Anup Shah. And they both brought about very important concerns about multiple marginalities and intersectionality, which is faced by women with disabilities. And they also reflected on the Rights of Persons with Disability Act 2016, which is also gendered and which recognizes 21 types of disabilities, but still we have miles to go. And she also said that queer people with disability face even much more exclusion and marginalization. She also talked about the self-image and the personal perception of the disabled bodies, the body image and the desirability and the sexual agency, which are never given any attention. And then the last presentation we had by Advocate Audrey DeMello, who spoke about the campaign we started. They said the child sexual abuse and violence against women, gender violence against women, I think why to be separated, because the very first nationwide campaign that happened was for a child. 16-year-old tribal girl who was raped by two uniformed policemen. But how women's movement, which was already taking up the cases of and providing support to rape survivors, whether they were children or women. So from 1980 to 2012, if you see the whole unfolding of the women's movement, where the institutional support was provided by women's movement. But the child rights organizations, they were demanding the law for the children who were sexually abused. So that's how in 2012, we got POCSO. And after the Nirbhaya tragedy in 2013, we got Indian Evidence Act. And she also talked about the recent issues that have emerged after the rape and murder of a doctor in Calcutta. She ended with the whole conundrum about the mandatory reporting. And she also said that how it becomes parents, teachers, police, counselors, all of them are underreporting the cases of violence. So there are so many socio-cultural, economic reasons for that. And she ended with the introduction of work that Majlis has been doing for past 3 decades. And today we have Dr. Padma Deosthali, pioneer and the mainstay of a one-stop crisis center concept of Dilasa. And she would also talk about the policies and legislations to combat violence against women and girls. And we'll have valedictory address by Jayashree Velankar on safe and inclusive public spaces. Over to you, Pretty.
Thank you, ma'am, for providing us such a comprehensive recap of the session so far. Moving forward, I would now like to invite Dr. Padma Deosthali, Program Director at CRIA, Creating Resources for Empowerment and Action. She will be presenting her talk on policies and legislations to combat violence against women and girls. Welcome, ma'am. The floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you, Vibhuti. As always, a very detailed, recap. And I would like to thank you also for suggesting this topic, which has really compelled me to think through a little more on the subject. And as always, thank you, IMPRI team, for all that you do and for this opportunity. You've had a very rigorous, session so far. And as Vibhuti, kind of summarized, almost all critical issues have been covered. I have heard many of these presentations over the last couple of days as part of this course, and also read the content that was shared with you. So I have tried, and my effort will be to not make it repetitive. But the idea is to quickly look at what is the policy framework and legislations to combat violence against women and girls, and then look at what is happening on the ground and what are the gaps. So, that is how I have planned this, the next couple of, a few minutes that I have with you. When we look at the policy, right from, the National Plan of Action for the Girl Child, which was there from 1991 to 2000, was towards ensuring the survival, protection, and development of the girl child. Then you have the National Population Policy 2000, which aimed to empower women by giving them full control over their reproductive choices and family planning. We all know that while this was what the policy intended or explicitly stated, because health is a state subject, many state policies, health policies, mandate to child norms, which is a violation of this national policy. But this is just to kind of say that as far as the policy framework is concerned, what is the thrust of these policies, and where do we, does that in a way provide us a framework which is intended towards elimination of violence against women. Next is the National Policy for Empowerment of Women 2001, which in addition to the advancement, development, and empowerment of women, also clearly talks about elimination of all forms of violence against women and girls. It also clearly says that there should be a gendered perspective that should be adopted in development and strengthen the legal system. Next, we have the National Mission for Empowerment of Women in 2010, which came by the NMEW with the intent to have a coordinated assessment of all government interventions and create a coordinated response, bringing all different systems and ministries together. Then, of course, you have the Nirbhaya Fund, which came in after the Nirbhaya incident in 2012. There's a huge amount, there's a whole kind of mandate that the Nirbhaya Fund talks about in terms of creating safety and safe space. It talks about setting up of one-stop centers. So the entire, if you look at what the scheme is, it includes the one-stop centers. It talks about road and road safety. It talks about fast-track courts. So it really is aimed at facilitating a better access to justice at one level, and also preventing violence against women. Then you have the National Policy for Women 2016, which clearly says elimination of all forms of violence against women through strengthening of policies, legislations, programs, institutions, and community engagement. And for the first time, you have the National Health Policy of 2017, which recognized violence against women as a healthcare issue. So if you look at any or all of these two slides that are here, and when if you look at the content and the policy drafting, the framework is all rights-based, and it is in the intention on paper is towards preventing violence against women and girls, and also creating a response which is gender sensitive to those who report violence in their lives. Then let's come to the legislations, and you have looked at many of these in details. So way back in the 90s, 1980s, when the women's movement, the feminist movement in India came together and raised the whole issue of violence against women. They came together around sexual violence and rape, but they also eventually raised the whole issue of what's happening to women within their households, which is domestic violence. And one of the issues that galvanized the movement was the large number of women who were being burnt in their own homes. And that led to the criminalization of domestic violence, which came in 80s itself. So we have the 498 AA, which is cruelty by husband or his relative. Then you have dowry deaths, because all these bride burnings and a large number of women who were, being killed and burnt in their houses. So a lot of legislation around that. The entire movement demanded, and it was enshrined in law, that women who die in such circumstances, especially those who come with burn injuries, there should be a dying declaration recorded, because women, the presumption is that a woman any human being who's dying will tell the truth. And therefore, the dying declaration was also introduced for all women who were brought within 7 years of marriage to any facility with burn injuries. Then, of course, you have the 2001 Preconception Prenatal Diagnostic Technique Act, which was again criminalizing son preference in our society. And it not only criminalizes sex determination, but also sex selection, which is part of preconception techniques, where the sex of the embryo is being selected. So this law also exists, and I know that you've had a detailed discussion around that. Then we have the civil law on domestic violence in 2005. We have the amendments to the rape law in 2013, the law against child sexual abuse, and of course the Rights of Persons with Disability Act that came in 2016. So next couple of slides, we'll look at some select issues and see what's happening on the ground. So you have the IPC sections around dowry deaths. And, I won't repeat, but this whole idea that women who are coming with burn injuries kept saying that this happened by accident. So either it was a stove burst or the kerosene just spilled over. So these were the kinds of histories, but these were really homicides or suicides that were taking place. And the dying declarations were being recorded, women's movement. They were, and I know that Vibhuti was also one of them. They were going to hospitals. They were available there to ensure that the magistrate came. They created a safe space for the woman who was, dying with burn injuries, to encourage them to say what actually has happened, which is about domestic violence. But women, so that movement was very strong, and a lot of women had the courage because of the presence of feminist counselors in these hospitals to enable them to speak. But let me just say, this is from a field study that I did as part of my doctoral research at Tata Institute. And this data is from 2016. And this is how, these are 22 women who reported with burn injuries above 50% that I spoke to. And as you will see this particular, table, you have the medical records at the first row, and the second row is what they told me. And you'll find that in the medical records, out of 22, 15 were registered as accidents. 6 were suicides, where women said that they had attempted, they were fed up because of the ongoing abuse, and they have done this to themselves. They poured kerosene on themselves and they lit themselves on fire. And the third, there was one woman who said it was homicide. Okay. As part of the study, when I spoke to them, only 3 women had said that they were really accidents. 6 of them spoke about ongoing abuse and being fed up with that, and therefore having, burned themselves. 2 additional, 2 of them spoke about this being done by their partner and their family members. And out of 22, 19 women spoke about domestic violence. So if this is the situation in 2016, you see the gap, and none of these cases, there was any dying declaration recorded, which is mandated in law because many of them were within 7 years of marriage. So you have a law, you had a certain practice that was evolved, which was supported by the women's movement strongly. But now on the ground, you find that if a woman says it's accident, then it just gets recorded as accidents. And if the number of such deaths because of flame burns is very high in India, more than maternal deaths. And I mean, it's not an issue which is being recognized as a public health issue or an issue of importance. I mean, road safety and deaths on the roads becomes a public health issue. But deaths within kitchen, even if you say that, these are accidents, the safety about kitchens, etc., does not become a major public health issue, because everybody knows that it's not accidents, but it's actually domestic violence. So either these are suicides or murders. While domestic violence was criminalized way back in the 80s, the experience of the women's movement over the years, when, listening to women's narratives, what came to light was that what women wanted was that the abuse in the house should stop. But they did not want the husband to be arrested. So there was many women who went to the police and filed a case, they would retract or they would change their statements because they wanted the home and the family to continue. They didn't want any disruption at that level. They just wanted violence to stop. And based on all these experiences, you have the women's movement that demanded for a civil law against domestic violence, which is a judicious mix of civil and criminal law procedures. So, to begin with, there is no criminal case made against the perpetrator. But if there's a violation of a court law, only then a criminal action can, there can be any kind of other arrest or other criminal procedures that get activated. Irrespective of religion, any woman can seek benefit under the law, and it is applicable to any two people living under the same roof. And so it's the whole concept of shared households and the fact that it could be a husband or a live-in partner, and you could, file a case against that person. What's important in this law, and I won't get into the details of the forms of violence, but apart from listing and articulating and defining forms of violence, physical violence is, like slapping, kicking, all of that. It lists all of that. But even sexual violence was defined, where marital rape or forced sexual intercourse is recognized as a form of violence against the domestic violence law. When it comes to verbal and emotional violence, and I have not listed all forms, so I've just picked up some of them, which, just to highlight what gets recognized as violence. Within verbal and emotional violence, insults for not having a male child, because, recognizing that there's high son preference in our country, insults for not bringing in dowry, forcing a girl to get married when she does not want to marry, or preventing her from marrying a person of her choice. So these are all codified as forms of emotional violence under the domestic violence law. Economic violence for the first time is, clearly defined, and all the things which are taken for granted, husband not giving money for household expenses, all of that, not allowing her to work, or, demanding the entire income that the woman has earned. All of this is now listed within the law as a form of violence. Several reliefs under the law, which I think you've already covered, so we will not get into the details. So, basically, it's a law that recognizes the right of a woman to live in a violence-free home. So, you can access a protection order, residence order, so nobody can ask you to leave the house. A woman can go to a protection officer or a service provider or the police, and, she doesn't have to go to the police station only to report violence. So that's how the whole mechanism changes as far as the domestic violence is concerned. So this is as far as domestic violence is concerned. The protection officer was a new entity, an entire new role that was given. Even today, all states do not have protection officers appointed. Many of them perform the role of protection officer as an additional charge. The Lawyers Collective for almost 10 or more than 10 years came up with an annual report on the implementation of PWDVA. And there were several lacunae in terms of the way this law has been implemented. So just to kind of, the law is extremely strong. It's, intended very well, but on the ground, these are the issues as far as its implementation are concerned. Next is the 2013 amendment to rape law, which I'm just highlighting the critical aspects of what we, have gained with these amendments. So the definition of rape was expanded. So from a definition which only recognized penovaginal penetration as rape, it now looked at oral penetration, anal penetration, fingering, use of objects, and it looked at all three orifices. So vaginal, anal, and, oral. So this was absolutely like a very, very important change in the way rape is defined in our country. It also brought in another important amendment, which was the right to healthcare for survivors, victims of sexual violence. And this section made it mandatory for all hospitals run by the public or private. So it's not just government hospitals, but private hospitals also. It made it mandatory for them to provide first aid and medical treatment free of cost. So you can't charge a victim or survivor for that. And it said that, so on one hand, it recognized the right to treatment, but it also said immediately inform the police, which is mandatory reporting of the offense. So, it's a bittersweet moment where the right to health was recognized in law, but along with it came mandatory reporting, and we'll come to that and see why there is a concern out there. It also clearly said that if a hospital fails to do it, there could be a criminal offense against that, and there was a punishment that was clearly mentioned. There was another section included here in 2013 about the police not filing a FIR. So if a police fails in doing its duty, or the hospital fails in performing its duty, both could be prosecuted under the law. Now coming to mandatory reporting. So you have mandatory reporting, which is well-intentioned in quotes, I would say, which is really to say that, okay, if anything happens, any kind of an offense, sexual violence, it must be reported to the criminal justice system, and irrespective of whether the victim or survivor wants to report or not, whether they want to enter the criminal justice system at all, whether they are safe, whether their abuse, the abuse has stopped. So there's absolutely no assessment of the situation or the consent of the person. The law is clear. It says that if you come to know about any such incident, you have to report, and if you fail to report, you could be prosecuted. And unfortunately, this is not only, this has become enshrined as law, and it makes healthcare providers and other service providers were brought into this, responsibility for mandatory reporting, which is a major issue, because what it does is that it becomes a huge barrier in accessing healthcare for survivors. Because if you go for treatment to a doctor, and the doctor is then going to mandatorily report the cause of that injury, and you're not prepared for it, then what the person is left to do is to, just leave the facility, because you don't want to enter the criminal justice system. And then you are left to either live without any treatment, or pay a huge amount to the private sector and seek treatment. So and it's also it violates informed consent, which is enshrined in our law, which is that no treatment or examination can be done without the consent of the person. And the law is clear that if you do that, you do anything against the will or the consent of the person, you could be prosecuted. So on one hand, you have mandatory reporting, and then you have informed consent. And that is the time when, Sehat and many other organizations, and I was part of the Sehat team that time, where we worked with the Ministry of Health, the Ministry of, Law, the WCD, and all the ministries in 2014 to ensure that the medical legal guidelines for responding to survivors of sexual violence clearly recognize that a person can, refuse to go to the police. And therefore, a concept that was introduced in 2014 through these guidelines issued by the Ministry of Health was informed refusal. So if a person comes to you for treatment and the person does not want to go ahead, you can record an informed refusal so that you are not prosecuted and the person is not denied health care. Now, this is something that I pulled together to just say, 1 minute. Is this visible? So this is from the NFHS data. Just to say that while you have all these great laws, there could be some contentious issues with mandatory reporting, but otherwise we have a policy and legal framework which is all well-intended, intentioned to prevent and respond to violence against women. Let's look at what is it as far as the ground reality is concerned. And using the NFHS data, these are some figures here that I would like to share, which is the prevalence of physical or sexual violence. So you have, just if we look at the last column, which is, last 12 months, we can just focus on that. You have 27% women in the age group of 18 and above who have said that in the last 12 months, they have faced some form of violence. And 27%, looking at the latest population figures, it is about 99 million women who have reported. Of these, 27 million women have reported some form of injury. And when it comes to help seeking, you have 14% women who have sought any kind of help, which is just 17 million. Now, this is what is a major cause of concern, that if you have such a good framework in terms of policy and law, then why is it that only 14% women have sought any kind of help? It's a very low number. And this is NFHS 5, and the previous round had reported 24%. So a decline of 10% in seeking help is a matter of concern, because that, I think, is an indicator that something is not going right as far as the infrastructure for survivors that the government has created, is probably not working in the interest of survivors. And if you look at, those who sought support from the police, it's 6%, which is what? It's about 9.9, 9 lakh women in a year out of 99 million women who have reported some form of violence in the last 1 year. So just to keep this 99 million in our minds, and let's look ahead, you have the police records, the NCRB data, which has recorded just about 1,51,000 cases. So cruelty by husband and dowry death. So you can see the huge gap in what the prevalence is and what's getting recorded at the police stations. This is something that I compiled to just put that in perspective, to also look at what is the other infrastructure like the one-stop centers and women's helpline. So you have the police system where you have the NCRB data, which is telling us that it's about 1,50,000 women who have registered any kind of a criminal case. You have the special cells for women, which have been set up by Tata Institute. And there are about 500 special cells for women and children across the country. 200 survivors per cell is what the estimate is. So that's the number who have probably sought any kind of support from these special cells, but these are not registered anywhere. So they are not published in either the NCRB or any other place. Then you have the WCD data, where you have one-stop center scheme, which the latest 2022 reports about 1,47,000 women and girls who have registered at one-stop centers. And the women's helpline, of course, records about 9 lakh women who have called women's helpline. When it comes to the health system, you have Sehat, which is supporting many hospital-based crisis intervention department. And I just put this number where you have about 47 hospital-based crisis intervention department across several states, which would be receiving about 150 to 200 survivors per department. So all of this is not centralized anywhere. Of course, there are many NGOs who are providing services. But what we need to remember is that we have 99 million and we have only about 17 million even coming forward to seek any kind of help. So with that, I will stop to just kind of reiterate that there is a gap in what our policy and laws are saying and what's happening to survivors on the ground. So I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, ma'am, for sharing your insights and expertise with us. I would now like to request Professor Vibhuti Patel-ji to share her remarks on the same.
Yeah. Thank you, Dr. Padma Devasthali, for a very crisp and sharp presentation. My only response is that recently, during September 22, while delivering a judgment on medical termination of pregnancy act, the Supreme Court made a landmark ruling that forcible sex by a husband can be considered rape under that statute, marking first legal recognition of marital rape in India. And after that, we are getting so many articles by the authorities that this is going to destabilize the system, family, the system of family and Indian families. No, so what do you have to say?
Yes, Vibhuti, and thank you for pointing that out. I didn't get into some of those other Supreme Court judgments, but that's a positive way. But the point is that in 2005, we have the domestic violence law, which has anyways recognized forced sexual intercourse as rape. So it is recognized as a form of sexual violence. What happens is that the exclusion under the criminal law is very violative because it's not even recognizing the domestic violence law. So, and also you have the Supreme Court coming up with these different judgments. The Delhi High Court also a couple of years back had tried to, also came up with a positive judgment. But so it's not about criminalizing it because it's already an offense. And when women want to report, because it's excluded, that doesn't get registered. But domestic violence law can, so many of all these service providers and counseling centers encourage women who are coming with complaints of sexual violence to go ahead and file a DIR under the Domestic Violence Act.
Yeah, but then all these people who are making statements, they are also very articulate. So they all seem to be knowing DV Act. Then why are they making such statements?
Exactly.
It is going to destabilize the institution of family and all. Because even otherwise, when the moment you become violent, the institution is destabilized. Children are in trauma. There is a communication gap. Everyone is unhappy. There is no so. What do they mean by this? No? Yeah. Even yesterday there was an article about
absolutely.
All right. So now we open the floor to questions from the participants. You can either use the raise hand feature or put the questions in the Q&A box.
Just to say that these slides will be available to all of you. So if you want to look at these numbers, I'll just add the sources so you have a referenced PPT. I'll send it to the IMPRI team. You can look at these numbers. I kind of put them together because, thanks Vibhuti for even suggesting this topic, which really made me think of what to say. So I thought it's important to bring in the gap. No question means you're tired or you found it absolutely not relevant, repetitive. I don't know. Please ask.
Or even intervene and share your experiences.
I think we are all overwhelmed with the numbers and the scale of the problem.
Yeah.
How does that then meet the need out there? Or, how do you even start to tackle the problem? And of course, you've mentioned how little gets reported or how few people go for help and the dilemma involved in going for help.
Yeah.
So it seems to be a conundrum where the person facing the brunt of it is anyway, is emotionally affected and is in a terrible situation, and they are faced with this dilemma.
Yeah.
And you said there are these special officers who don't even exist. So where are we? What kind of adequacy do we have in the system, in the infrastructure, in the services to even address this issue?
Yeah. Thanks, Arun. And my aim was not to create a paralyzing situation, but to kind of say that at the end of this course, it's a great course that's been put together, just to say that how important it is for us to really work and advocate for creating an infrastructure that really works for women survivors. So, instead of from 24%, if the help seeking goes down, and 10% in a national household survey is a huge number. And that's something that, all of us need to just recognize. So it was just intended to motivate us to do more and maybe analyze more and work harder to stop violence against women and girls.
All right. So with that, thank you, Dr. Padma Deosthali ji. Thank you, Mr. Arun Amrita, for your question and your enriching comment. It is always a pleasure to learn from you, ma'am. We look forward to collaborating with you in future IMPRI events. Moving forward, we have Ms. Jayashree Velankar, Director at Jagori. She will be presenting her talk on safe and inclusive public spaces. We welcome you, ma'am. The floor is all yours.
Hello.
Hello.
Yeah, okay. We are audible. Yes.
Yeah. Am I audible?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
You're audible.
Okay.
Ma'am, your introduction was already done, but since you're here with us now, I'll just repeat it one more time. So we have with us Ms. Jayashree Velankar. She's the director at Jagori. The title of her talk is Safe and Inclusive Public Places.
Okay. So I can start?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you once again, my dear friend Vibhuti and friends at IMPRI, for this opportunity for me to share with you some insights on this topic. Some of you may be aware that Jagori has been the pioneer of what we call Safe Cities Agenda. We initiated this work in India, and last 3-4 years, we have been trying to expand this agenda to not only cities, but to peri-urban and rural areas. And that's why I thought we can talk about safe and inclusive public spaces. Though I'll talk about safe cities because many people would be interested in knowing, and you can get the basic understanding about what the issues are, and then how we can discuss how we can extend that same logic, same demands to other areas. So how much time should I take to make a presentation, Stuti?
45 minutes.
45 minutes speaking? There
If
are
you
no
don't want to
question
speak
answer?
20. No, there will be. So
Okay, yeah, okay, 45
That's the
minutes.
maxi-
I didn't
that's the-
expect.
that's the
I-
limit, I said. You want
Okay,
to
I
do
didn't
anything.
expect that much. I thought maybe 25, 30 and then rest of the time maybe. Okay, but okay.
This is valedictory, last lecture. of the
Oh,
course.
okay. So I hope I don't bore you. You guys must be tired probably, but let me try my best. So ladies, since this may not be interactive, but let us start with what do we mean by public space? What is a public space? So public space can be defined as an open and accessible space that is accessible to general public. So all kinds of public spaces like roads, pavements, public squares, parks, railway and bus stations, stadium, hospitals, theaters and surrounding areas, even malls, beaches, hospitals, all these can be termed as public spaces. Now you can imagine public spaces in 2-3 different settings. Cities, because most of you, I presume, are city dwellers, so it is very easy for you to imagine these spaces. But even if you go to a village, there are few public spaces, there are those open spaces, even fields, roads, there would be a temple and surrounding area. Then there is couple of big trees in village, and around that tree many people sit around. There are small shops, small nakas as we call in the village, panchayat bhavan and that area, school and surroundings, or dispensary and surrounding area. All this can be, or public wells, where men go for bathing and women go for filling the water. So all this can be public spaces. There would be streams and rivers, riverfronts, again, where people go and for different purposes, to fetch water, to bathe, to wash clothes. You can find truck drivers and cleaners cleaning their trucks also there, or people washing their buffaloes and cows also, they take them to the stream. So there are number of public spaces. So the point is whether they are safe and inclusive, and what do we mean by that, and why have we started talking about it? That is the crux of the matter, as it were. So, as I told you, it began with safe cities and safe city work in different countries, not only India, but in different Latin American countries, European countries, UN Women, UN Habitat. All of them promoted discussion studies around this issue. But if we actually want to think why at this juncture today, why we should think about why public spaces need to be safe and inclusive, I will offer you two important reasons, in my opinion. First, if you see, the world has experienced unprecedented urban growth in the recent decades. You can go on the internet, and there would be several studies and data and graphs. If you browse through any UN Habitat document, you will come across different data. But for this today's lecture, I mean, if you want to understand it in nutshell, what is interesting for us to note is in 1950s, 1/3 of global population lived in cities. Today, in say the last data that was available in UN Habitat was around 2009, 2010. Today, it is around 54%. So more than half the population now lives in cities. And it is expected that by 2030, 60% population will be city dwellers. So this phenomenon makes, I mean, urbanization is one of the 21st century's most transformative trends. Because as we know, and even if you have never lived in a village, you must have seen it in films, you must have read it in some fiction. Maybe some of you have some relatives or your parents must have come from rural areas. So you have some clue about rural life. Of course, the size is small. Everybody knows probably everybody by the first name. Then there are those settlements which are caste-based or vocation-based, Lohar Gali, Kumar Gali, like that. So all those people who are performing those functions live in that particular area. So there is a lot of segregation around caste. This is a very particular Indian phenomenon. But villages are generally small. Amenities and services that are available are relatively poorer compared to cities, particularly healthcare facilities. And the governance structure is different. In cities, we have Nagar Nigams, Nagar Parshads, urban councils, and some capital cities also are the seats of power for state legislature. Whereas in villages, you will find there is a Panchayat Raj system in India. So governance structures are different, their budgets are different. So there is this different organization, but when so many people migrate to cities, it is a tumultuous kind of an event and experience for anyone who's migrating in this manner. Leaving his or her roots behind and coming to a different location where nobody probably knows you by first name. Hardly very few people will know. You may come here basically to looking for work. So you will come here either looking for work or for work, mainly around that. And so depending on your caste and class and your earlier connections, you will start living in the part of city that will be commensurate with your basically class and caste structure. So that is why it is a big transformative thing for an individual, for communities, and cities give you a possibility. Cities offer you a possibility, which is especially true in Indian situation, to leave behind your caste identity. It is not necessarily, everybody may not, unless you tell or unless there is a reason for people to find out, you can sometimes live without making your caste identity public. And that was one reason. So with caste identity, you leave the chances of caste oppression, especially true for Dalits, that happen in villages, because Dalits are not allowed to fetch water on common wells. So that's why Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar had said that go to cities. So this itself is a tumultuous experience. If it is tumultuous for men, so we can easily imagine that it would be even more so for women and children. My second point is, these days we also talk about SDGs. We forgot the millennium, but now we are talking about sustainable development goals. And by 2030, we are supposed to achieve them. We all know that we probably won't. But anyway, there is that, deadline and towards which we are working. Now, SDG, there are 17 SDGs, as you know. And one important SDG, SDG 11, is about cities. SDG 11 talks about making cities and human settlements inclusive, safe, resilient, and sustainable. And I think this is also very important for us to remember today in 2024, because in last 4 years, COVID-19 has taught us many lessons. It exposed many fault lines in our societies and countries. And especially in our country, millions of workers walked back to their villages as cities came to a grinding halt. So, otherwise cities are destinations of dreams, of their sites of production, their sites of work and development, and so everybody aspires to go at least to visit a city, if not live in the city. But we saw during pandemic how cities came, and even in other parts of the world, it's not only in India, but in other parts of the world, cities came to a grinding halt. Situation was not so bad in other countries, especially developed countries. But we know what happened, and people thought we would be able to live and survive in villages. So they went back to their homes. So that shows us how precarious the cities look. Very glamorous. There are those multi-storied buildings, posh highways, and malls, and different restaurants, and different centers of entertainment, and a lot of business happens, a lot of money gets generated. So cities are very attractive, no doubt. Cities are sites of production and consumption. At the same time, cities are very precarious also. The same capitalist kind of mode of production makes them precarious also. And that is also one reason, because if SDG 11 talks about resilience, we have to think about how we want to plan our cities actually, and how we want to make our cities better for everyone, inclusive for everyone. And that brings me to the topic. And the third point I would say, as I said, migration is human existence and human evolution wouldn't have been possible without migration. We all know that. We came out of Africa. Now there are several theories, but human beings evolved because of migration. So anybody who talks about outsiders and, original habitants and all that, today, genome and all those scientific research is proving all those theories and conceptions, how hollow those conceptions are. So, rather than we should talk about humanity, but for women, with migration is related mobility, right? For women, mobility is always a vexed issue. It has always been a part of patriarchal control. It is one of the 5 ill effects, in my opinion, of patriarchal control over women. Women lost their right to mobility when patriarchal control was established. Women have to seek permission, and only few places they are allowed to go, and for specific purposes. So even if they move to cities, that mindset remains. So whether cities or villages, women are expected to travel or move only for certain reasons. Men are allowed to move for whatever reason. Just to have a smoke, they can go, they can loiter. Women are not. Women only are allowed only if they're working and adding to family income. So from that angle also, we have to think about safe and inclusive spaces. And this is true of villages also. In village also, woman cannot move to any place within village as per her will, at whatever time she pleases. No, there are several restrictions. And it depends on the caste, age, many things, her marital status, so all that. Now, if we think, when we think about the discourse around safe cities, it actually grew also around the growing incidence of violence against women. Here, I will say it is really dialectical. See, cities, we think of them to be more safe or, as centers of development. They are. That's why there are police stations. Maybe those systems are better. There are bigger hospitals. There are courts. There are lawyers available. Compared to a village, if a woman faces, or if she is sexually assaulted, she will have more services available in the city. There are better reporting systems. So things get reported also. But at the same time, because cities are gendered, because cities are basically built around male worker citizen, and that too able-bodied upper caste, upper class male worker citizen, women's specific needs are not taken care of. And that makes them vulnerable. So it's a dialectical thing. It improves reporting. So whenever crimes against women happen in a city, they get, because there are newspaper offices, there are now television channel operating in the city. The journalists can reach to those spots easily. There is that 24/7 coverage. So all these incidents come to people's notice very easily. In a village, it is still very difficult. Though villages also, there are a lot of crimes are happening, but in cities, whether the city is safe or not, that whole discourse, feminists started paying attention to it because of this growing violence. Historically, if you look at the cities, I remember reading about early industrial revolution days history, and how city like London or city like Manchester, how the small the cities also in England came up, how men from different villages, from their farms, collective farms, family farms, were brought in herds to these cities to operate those machines. Because steam engine was invented, but workers were not invented, right? They had to be brought from the villages. So those villages, from those men were suddenly brought and put into shanties in very unhygienic conditions. In city like London, today it is very difficult for us to imagine. But in early part of 20th century, people used to die of cholera and such communicable diseases in London. Today we don't, we can't imagine, right? London looks very glamorous and attractive to us, and it was a seat of power for the longest period in the history. But that was the case. So earlier only men came to those, and those cities started operating. Later on, women folk were brought when it was realized by the capitalists that we need those women folk to provide them the unpaid care work, so that the labor power of that man, which he spends in the working whole day in that factory, is replenished, and he is fit enough to go back to work in the factory next day. That is how women came, and then the family wage, that whole concept came, and that man, woman, and 2 or 3 children, that whole thing came, and which has stuck till today. That is another story, but that also involves evolution of cities, today's cities. Model, that was the model. So what happened? If you look at history of city like Bombay, because of textile mills, because of the peculiar geographical situation of Bombay, there was a lot of investment by the English rulers, and textile mills came up. And Vibhuti can tell us more details, but earlier the men came from the neighboring areas, what we call Konkan, the coastal Maharashtra. Later on, women came, and as in other cities, women, once they come, they start taking part in some kind of productive work also. So there were some women who were employed in those textile mills also. Slowly it happens, but mainly it remains for, the city remains a place for, as I said, able-bodied, upper caste, upper class man worker. And what happens? This gendered nature of the cities leads to exclusion and lack of opportunities, a lack of infrastructure and services that women need specifically according to their own gender. their own gendered lives. And that's why we have to look at cities from this angle. Only then we can understand why cities are unsafe or why they are not inclusive. Now, when we say inclusive, we talk about women. And even in women, we generally visualize heterosexual cis women. Now, there are so many different types of women, no? There are single women, there are old women, there are very young girls, there are sex workers, there are trans women, there are trans men, there are disabled women, there are working women, so many of them, and they will have different needs. For example, we did a study in Ranchi with 200 plus women street vegetable vendors to understand their mobility concerns and their safety concerns. And this is what we found out. You know, that city like Ranchi, I mean, we visualize the city, but these women vendors come from peri-urban and also rural areas. Some grow those vegetables in their own small farms, pack them, and come to a city of Ranchi either in a small tempo or by a train. Peri-urban, they normally come in those autos or small jeeps they hire collectively. They load their stuff on that jeep, and they 5-6 women, they collectively pay that person and they come. Now they all have different concerns and different needs. But as women, all of them, when they are street vending, they need toilets because they're spending the whole day on the street vending their vegetables. They need drinking water. And in case of any harassment or sexual assault, they need those services, and everything is lacking. In 26 major markets of Ranchi, we found out no market had specific drinking water facility. And forget women vendors, even men vendors don't find it. Now, so many women with their very young infants, they come to sell their vegetables to the Ranchi city. Now, they need space to breastfeed. It is not available. So, they sit in the corner and they are forced to breastfeed their child in that bhara bazaar, as we call. Now, if you will find so many studies giving us figures how much street vendors contribute to a country GDP and all that. Now, what point knowing about GDP contribution if they are not getting these basic facilities? Can we think that their life is safe? Or because sometimes safety we think only in terms of physical harm or injury or prevention of that. But you know, every day, if you can't relieve yourself, can't go to washroom or a toilet, can't drink water, potable water, can't have any space to, you know, sometimes you just feel like resting for 5 minutes during that whole day. There is no space. Now, some of these women, very interesting, our study is available on our website. Some women who come from different parts of, different rural areas to Ranchi city taking a train. Sometimes they don't finish all their vegetables. They don't manage to sell all their vegetables. So they decide to stay back. They stay back. Next day, they sell all their vegetables. And once they are all over, only then they go so that they minimize their losses. Now, for such women, there is no space to stay for that night safely. So many of them go to Ranchi station platform, railway platform. And all kinds of harassment, all kinds of demands for money happen. Now, there happened to be one shelter home, but it was at such an obscure place. There was no nameplate, nothing. Women didn't know. We found out during our safety audits. We taught these women to do safety audits and they found out. And so some women started taking shelter there. But it's a small place. Now, government, if Ranchi city had such a big number of women street vendors, it becomes the responsibility of the governance structure to provide shelter, safe shelter to these women. And I would say they should create centers even for men vendors, because they will also face the same issue. Just because they are men, maybe they will not get sexually assaulted. But who would like to sleep on the railway platform the whole night? So these are some of the issues, when it comes to infrastructure. You think of any city in India, a city like Delhi, which is a national capital city, situation of public toilets for women is pathetic. Bombay, whoever has lived in Bombay, we calculate how many hours it will take from our home to reach our office in South Bombay. And particularly during menstruation, it is such a difficult time for women to manage all that. And it happens every month. And that's why that right to pee movement came up. So we had to tell our government that it's our right to pee, provide toilets. And even today, toilets are not constructed in enough or adequate quantity. The same story across the city. Again, around the toilets, you will find many young boys or men standing. There is no police presence. There is nobody there sometimes. So you will feel scared to go inside that toilet if you are alone, particularly at night. So sometimes city planners, and that's why feminists have been saying that if you want to make cities inclusive or safe, first thing, it starts from urban planning and designing. Because as I said, the design is for a specific set of men. So all these women that I told you, old women, how is an old woman supposed to go get her groceries? Do we have pavements? Do we have footpaths? Do we have enough street lights? The footpaths are generally dug up. We know what happens with our sanitation facilities when it rains. All the cities these days get flooded and waterlogged. What happens to poor localities? We did a quick survey with our domestic workers with whom we work. And in some areas in Delhi, the waterlogging lasted for 2 to 3 days. They simply couldn't move out of their homes because water was inside their homes also, some of their homes also. They couldn't go. Obviously, the employer is going to cut their salaries for that. So they suffer in many ways. Not only they lose their earnings, but that waterlogging causes a lot of communicable diseases. Especially women can't go out to pee if they're menstruating, if they're pregnant, if they are lactating mothers, you can imagine. And for older women and even men or disabled women, it is even doubly difficult. So who plans? Our urban planning today centers around all the flyovers, malls, 5-star hospitals, 5-star hotels, all these big places which are not meant for poor. Whereas who makes the city? It's the poor city dwellers, the working class, but they are left out. And whenever one class is left out, we have to always presume that the women from that class will suffer doubly. Third thing that matters, and it is directly related to mobility, is transport. What happens? Now, in Delhi, when the Chief Minister started free buses for women and girls, there was a lot of criticism. Many men didn't like it. And today we find out, as I said, we work with many domestic workers. So we were talking to them and they tell us, suppose 4 or 5 domestic workers, because sometimes they are from the same locality, going to a same locality to do their job. If 7 or 8 such women are standing at the bus stop for waiting for the bus, and when the bus driver and bus conductor see this group of 7 or 8 women, even though there are seats empty in the bus, they don't stop because they have this anger, oh, these women are traveling free. Okay, you have made bus ride free. Metro fares are comparatively low, I must say. But from your home, you have to sometimes take an auto or you have to walk for 15-20 minutes to reach a metro station, then take a metro, get off, and then walk for another 10-15 minutes to reach your place of work. Now, this last mile connectivity, as we call it, that is the issue. Metros, yes, metro rides are safe for women. So far, we haven't heard many cases of, on the platform, there can be harassment, but within the metro coaches, so far, no untoward incident has been reported. So women find it relatively safe. But suppose a nurse who has a second shift, or factories these days don't have, but a nurse has different shifts. So if her shift ends around, say, 9 o'clock, she takes a metro and she reaches the last metro station near her home around 10 o'clock. She doesn't feel safe to walk back to her home, nor does she feel safe to travel in an auto. Because a lot of harassment happens in these share autos or auto stops or bus stops. No police is present there that time when they are most required. So sometimes we have observed women give up jobs because of this unsafe kind of conditions. Or we have found out, like Girija Borkar has found out in her study, that young girls and even their parents, they opt for colleges that are little far off if the transport and other conditions are safe there. So they are paying more to get the same education that they might have got closer to their homes. But that area not being safe, they have to spend more to go to an area which is safer. So women pay price for being safe and to be included and to be given this opportunity in many different ways. These are very subtle. Nobody might have done the calculation how much it costs, but it costs. We were told there is going to be smart cities. Now, very recently, there were the reports released how our one-stop centers or helplines, how they were choked of funds and they actually don't function. And one-stop centers or helplines, they actually originated in cities. So if they are not functioning, we cannot take solace from the fact that there is one number available. I may be calling 181 forever, but if I don't get help when I badly require it, what is the point? So that brings us to services, and services of different kinds. In Bombay itself, in last 4-5 years, or maybe more years, we have seen so many people dying because the area was waterlogged and those water holes on the ground, they were open and they didn't notice and they fell inside. Our own doctor friend fell inside and died. So, what kind of services and what kind of taxes we citizens pay? There is this myth that only income tax people pay tax, but we all know that everybody pays tax, and poor people actually pay sometimes huge amount of tax in indirect way. So don't they deserve this? But they get the worst kind of amenities. And actually speaking, this waterlogging due to rain, which actually is a result of very bad urban planning, concretization, indiscreet concretization, not leaving any gutters or any way for the rainwater to flow. Poor people are paying from their own pockets with their own lives, because that is the time. And now we are witnessing a huge rise of dengue patients in Delhi. Again, poor women, men, children will pay the costs. So these 3-4, main pillars: urban planning and designing, infrastructure, transport, services, all these are important if we have to think of places to be safe and inclusive. They have to be designed in such a way that everybody can feel included everybody can feel that they have opportunities to for education, opportunities for work, opportunities for leisure, and opportunities for loitering also, and opportunities and services available in case of any emergency or any requirement. So as I told you, while working in Jharkhand, we realized that we need to take this agenda to peri-urban and rural areas also. And we work with elected women representatives and other stakeholders in Panchayat Raj institutions. And we realized that none of them are aware of their roles or responsibilities and what kind of budgets are available. We did a small study. Again, it is available on our website about the girls toilets in for girls in schools in 6 districts of Jharkhand. It was a rapid assessment. It is not done as very systematic survey, and we couldn't collect qualitative, stories from them. But the data shows that very high number students, both girls and boys, they themselves are cleaning the toilets. The toilets are not safe. Toilets sometimes are not within the school compound. If toilets are there, there is no water. If there is toilet and there is water, there is no electricity. If everything is there, then there is no way they can lock the door, or they can't dispose the sanitary napkins. Sanitary napkin vending machine is available hardly in 1 or 2 schools. We talk to school authorities also. We talk to the organizations working in that field, and we have given the details in our study. There are several budgets, like Samagra Shiksha Abhiyan, Sarva Shiksha Abhiyan. They provide budgets for construction of toilets. There are budgets available to get a sanitary napkin vending machine fitted in a school. Or they can give money to a group, if there is any women's group or any other group in our village, they can provide money for that machine so that girls can get. Now, government has this scheme where girls sometimes in some schools get only 2 pads, and they are told you have to make do with this only 2 pads. So everything we do is half-hearted. 15 finance commission, every Gram Panchayat can allocate 25% of received funds for health, cleanliness, sanitation, and all such purposes. There is money available under Swachh Bharat. There are other schemes. So I think every time paucity of budget is not the reason. But people are not aware of it. And there is no monitoring, and people, all those who are supposed to deliver this to the common people are not accountable. Who is monitoring their accountability? Whether in cities or whether in villages. And that's why women continue to suffer. To sum up, I would say, if we have to look at women's safety, in a very inclusive way, we can think of 5 or 6 points. One is right to the city and right to safety at all times and in all spaces. Right to a political voice, participation, and equal right to resources in urban local governance, including to plan and imagine city spaces. When I tell my young colleagues that in early parts of, in 1980s, whenever we had 8 March celebrations, and also we used to have a long march, we used to come up with some demands. And we routinely demanded community kitchens and community laundry. I think today that kind of demand makes so much sense, given the kind of spread our cities are having. If 60% people are going to live in the cities, we will need this kind of services for poor. In Delhi, there are those community centers, but those centers are not designed by asking the citizens what they need there. That has to have people-centric planning. Forget people-centric, women-centric, no-centric planning has happened. So we have to focus on that. Third is right to autonomy, mobility, bodily integrity, and freedoms. Then comes right to decent and secure employment, livelihood, health, social security, housing, public provisioning of services, and access to effective redress systems. And right to leisure, with measures to reverse harmful social norms, including of unpaid care burden for women and girls. I stop here. Now we can have questions if you have. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ms. Jayashree Velankar ji, for such an astute and insightful session. I would now like to request Professor Vibhuti Patel ji to share her comments on the same.
Yeah, thank you, Jayashree. You really made the complex issues very, very easily palatable, because you also brought in the whole historical unfolding of gendered urbanization over last 200 years, and also political economy of migration, the economic contribution made by the migrant population. And also it was a data-driven understanding of the contribution of the working class who are city makers, and brought in the gender dimension of paid and unpaid work, and also the right-based approach to make cities safe and inclusive. But I think now the question of the representation and voice, how does Jagori tackle that in the city plan? What efforts does it?
Okay. Should we wait for 2-3 more questions, or should I just answer you?
No, you wait for it.
Okay. Yeah.
Participants can use either the raise hand feature or the Q&A box to drop in their questions.
Hello. Example, I think busy with their own feedback session.
I think people are tired.
No. And there is a feedback session after this. We are closing today. So I think
Okay.
Yeah. So I think representation. Please go ahead.
Sorry, yeah. No, I was just reminded of a comment that my son made 7 years ago when he landed in India. He was born and brought up in Switzerland. And I said, what surprises you or what shocks you? And he said one was bureaucracy and the other was the filth, the dirt all around. And I said, my dear son, there's probably a limitation in budget, infrastructure. He said, no. People just don't care. That's what he said. Now, I'm using that to address this issue of safety and facilities, and thinking back at what transportation modes work for my mother, what doesn't work, because public facilities aren't there. Now, all the thing about safe spaces and infrastructure, how can that happen if, as a society, the intent isn't there? If we just don't care, how is it going to happen? And how are we addressing the issue of intent, or what we consider important and not so important as a people? I think it starts with the intent question. In business talk, it's strategy, but it's about intent. What do I aspire for? What do I want for myself, for my people, for my mother, my sister, my wife, my daughter? Thank you.
So to add on to that, it's a question from me. So I come from a not very urban area, but it's not really a very rural area as well. It's more of a town in flux, which is it's kind of a agglomeration, urban agglomeration. So the thing is, the towns that are kind of adjacent to the main city, we don't really have street lights, we don't really have good roads, washrooms are not really there. Even though there's a lot of public spending that happens that the panchayat takes on a yearly basis right before elections. So I would want to probably get some advice on how we as youngsters can become an active part, so as to influence this kind of public expenditure that happens so that these gendered needs get taken into consideration.
Okay, maybe Vibhuti, now I can take this 4
Yeah.
questions. Yeah.
Yeah. Please.
Yeah. So, you asked me about representation, and somewhere you were also asking me about what kind of actions then Jagori takes up. Then there was this comment about bureaucracy and field and intent. Intent being the key issue, and then what young people can do. So I'll try to answer these 4 points. About representation, what we have done in Delhi, our work on this urban areas and women's entitlement actually started with a drive by Delhi Municipal Corporation. You know how they go on uprooting people from one locality and taking them to some far away kind of area in the name of resettlement, acquisition of land for some development project. So that is what happened in Delhi. And women and men, of course, were pushed to these 2 areas. One was really far from what we call center of the city. Actually, that also is a fault in the planning. The city generally it's presumed that there will be only one center. And so everything is, built around it. Actually, we have to give up that idea and we have to think of multi-centric design. Because there will be those different clusters, and as Stuti was saying, that these newer areas near the city now get sucked into or get extended into city limits, get extended, and they get inside, but they remain the villages within the city. So that kind of development is going on. Take any city, that is the trend today. So that's why we have to think of multi-centric approach. And what we started doing, we started organizing these women, and we thought we have to make them aware of their rights. And we have to, after making them aware, we thought that they will start taking things in their own hand to demand those amenities. And that is what has happened. Of course, you know how the social change happens. So it has taken more than 10-15 years. But this continuous work, what has now happened, we have taught several groups across India, but in Delhi itself, we work in 4 communities, and 2 are resettlement colonies, and 2 others are lower socioeconomic strata colonies. So we work with these women, we make them aware, we taught them how to do safety audits. Now they don't wait for us. They do. And this kind of monitoring or this kind of audits, it's an ongoing process. Because you can't stop once they fix the street light, you can't rest. Within 8-10 days, something happens. And somebody will steal away, or some a pole will get damaged, or something will happen. Like we found in Jharkhand, women in some villages were so strong, they wanted street lights because it was so difficult otherwise to move in the dark. And eastern part of India, sun sets little early, especially winters, it is very difficult. So they got the street lights, Panchayat fixed the street lights, and some of the men folk in the villages damaged them on purpose. They just smashed those lights because they used to sit there and drink. Now, when the lights were on, they couldn't do it because it suddenly became, everybody could see what they were doing. So there are these things happening. And so, Arunji, as you said, I mean, yes, if intent is not there, then what will you do? But we have to collectively keep trying. So in Delhi, at least now, if there is any problem with street light, now there is any problem with water, provision, sometimes the water doesn't come. or the taps are damaged, or particularly women become even more aware, acutely aware of importance of all this during COVID. Because they thought if our area remains filthy and dirty, and if the garbage is not cleaned on time, it was a misconception, but in a way it helped. They thought we will get corona. So they started putting a lot of pressure. And so they themselves are now monitoring. And these things need to be monitored every day. Now we need to have some monitoring system and some system to fix it within the system itself. But till that time arrives, citizenry that is more aware and more demanding in these manners is one way forward. Because only, for example, garbage. You will see in posh localities of South Delhi, you will not see garbage piled up. But in poorer localities, the garbage will be piled up because they don't send so many workers in those areas or so many vans to collect those, collect that stuff. So even within South Delhi, there are those few areas which are not very high posh localities. There it happens. So, you know, we have to be vigilant all the time to do this. And now women have understood that it is not a one-day thing. Every day you have to do it. Every time this happens, you have to just go and complain and sit there till they listen to you, till they take some corrective actions. And as far as young people, Stuti, what I would say, like you said, so much budget is given and so much, they show that so much budget was exhausted. Look at Bombay Municipal Corporation's behavior. So much money they show that we cleaned all those nalas. And first rain and Mumbai is waterlogged. So where did that money go? So
40% of total budget is on
Yeah.
sanitation.
See?
BMC.
Such huge amount they show, but it is not spent properly or maybe rationally. So there would be some organizations who have to do budget analysis. That is one way to collect data and to present it to the authorities, or to, you know, just for the public knowledge that this is what is happening. So like I said, in Jharkhand, I wouldn't say that everybody is doing on purpose. Many times we found out that the teachers or even panchayat members, you know, they are not properly trained. So they don't know that there is so much money available in so many schemes. There are those different schemes. Only the panchayat sachiv will know. So it depends on the panchayat sachiv's, you know, mood maybe. If he wants to help you, then he will tell you there is this scheme, you can apply for it. But there is enough budget available if a panchayat decides that all the girls in our villages, in our village, should get sanitary napkins, or should have, girls and boys should have toilets in the school. Because in Jharkhand, the Jharkhand finance minister, he liked my suggestion. He gave orders to his department also that we have to take this on priority. I said, Jharkhand has 3 issues. Very huge school dropout, early or child marriage, and then because of that, early first pregnancy. I said one measure of providing toilets in the school will take care of all these 3. Because as girls start getting periods, then they stop going to the schools. Parents also stop sending them to the schools because there are no toilets available. If they stay at home, then parents don't want them to sit idly at home. They marry them off. And once you get married, we know we Indians believe that first child has to happen quickly. So she undergoes a early first pregnancy. So a simple measure can do that. But as you said, Arunji, intent, that political will. And for that, I think generating this kind of information, because many people have not seen the connection between these 3 dots. These 3 are not separate data points for me. They are connected. So we have to expose that interconnectedness. You know, if your city is not safe for women, it will not be smart. How can any city which is not safe for half the population be smart? But we like very good, slogans. So I hope I have answered some of your I mean, because I also don't have answers to all the questions. We all are struggling. But this is what we need to do. Yeah.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, Vibhuti, Patel-ji, and thank you, Mr. Arun, for sharing your insights and your comments with us. I would now like to request Professor Vibhuti Patel-ji to share with us her closing remarks for today's session.
Yeah. So I think for today's session, as I told earlier also, that such a complex issues and the interconnectedness, that not seeing the issues in a separate silos, but showing the connectivity, micro, meso, and macro. I think that has been the strength of today's session. And the first one by Padma Devasthali, which she also took the macro framework, because she talked about the laws and policies and connected them with the work that is happening about the combating gender-based violence. So I think it was a very rewarding session, and it's most appropriate for the closing day, because we have had so many localized struggles were narrated. Individual issue-based campaigns were taken care of in the previous sessions, but today we got the holistic picture. Yeah. And also the grounded political economy, the material reality, the livelihood issues, and contextualizing that within that gender-based violence. Yeah.
So with this, we come to the end of the third cohort of Ending Gender-Based Violence, Challenges and Responses. Before we move on to a final vote of thanks, I would like to invite the participants to share their feedback on the program. You must share your experience and insights gained through this program. Please feel free to unmute yourselves. You can also use the chat box.
Okay, I say thank you, and I'll take your leave. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Hello, who would like to start? No feedback?
I don't want to be the only one speaking, so I'd rather wait for others, and then I do have something to say, but I'll wait.
Yeah.
Shreya ji,
Go ahead. Yeah.
Hello.
Yeah.
First of all, thanks to everyone, all the facilitators which have been giving us that amazing sessions of the entire journey of this session. I like to give my gratitude to all the sectors which are untouched and like literally not seen clearly with the naked eyes or with that perspective which the facilitators told us to see the all the things which we are seeing in our daily lives or which the victims or the women are facing. So after attending these sessions, I got literally a new lens, a new perspective to see all those things with a new lens. And thanks for giving this opportunity and this great learning session and time. Thank you for just these great learnings.
Thank you. It's quite reassuring, because this is the fourth cohort on the gender-based violence. Yeah. So, thank you. Karthika ji, are you ready? Dr. Mamta Goswami, are you there? Rushija Mukherjee, would you like to give your feedback?
Hello, ma'am. Ma'am, the sessions were very wonderful. Gained a lot of insights about gender-based violence through the sessions and learned a lot about the various perspectives and the various issues and how what could be the possible solutions to these issues. And thanks to all the speakers, it was really very amazing, ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you, Shija. Ms. Anne-Marie Suresh, are you there? Ms. Mahira Imam, would you like to give your feedback? Hello. Kartika ji?
Hello, ma'am.
Yeah,
Am I
Mahira.
audible?
Yeah, yes, Mahira.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Sorry for I'm not able to put on my video, but I think it's fine. Actually, I liked all the session which started with the introduction of gender-based violence and everything. And for me, both were, I mean, coming from a gender studies background, I have been seeing things. I mean, I have been reading also. So for me, it was like I got the extra, what we say, na, extra adding up. Like I was getting to know the case stories also, because when we read the books and attended the classes, like in my masters and my MPhil, I did got to know about things. But here it was like brushing up everything. It was there. And I think in the introduction also I said that I am working on cyber violence. So what I mean, I wanted to give a kind of, not a, I mean, a small suggestion also, like when in future, if this kind of programs takes place, can't we have a, because we know that cyber violence is becoming as a global pandemic, can't we have a session onto that, so that it would be like yeah, it would be interesting for those who are working on to that, because we are still having, I mean, lacking the knowledge of how to collect the data, how to do the things for cyber spaces, because day to day everything is changing and upgrading, updated. So I just wanted to like say that if it's possible for the future course or for future anything, that would have been great. Thank you so much.
Yeah, we had earlier, Anita Guruswamy was there. She has done massive work on IT. IT for Change is an organization which has done lots of work on cyber violence. Yeah, so we'll definitely remember and include this topic. Yes. In the previous cohort, it was there. So this time we went into systems and structures. That was the focus. But I think it's very important. We always remember. Yes, Mr. Ali.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. I have the privilege of being the only male in this class. In a way, it's a privilege, but I'm also very sad about that. And I'm, in general, also sad that given the significance of the topic, it's a rather small class. I would have expected more participants for the effort that you, Professor Vibhuti Patel, and your team and IMPRI and others have put into this. So it surprises me that it has not attracted a greater audience. The background for me, you know, there are the personal things regarding my sister and other things which have led me to be interested in these topics. But what I've seen very recently is, on the one hand, a knee-jerk reaction each time a high-profile case comes up in India, and we saw that recently in Calcutta. On the other hand, it is very much about retribution, retributive justice, rather than prevention or reformation. I was recently talking about this to a friend of mine in the social sector, and she said, Arun, we have so many policies, the framework is there, the problem is in the implementation. The framework is all there, and she has 20 plus years of experience in child and women's issues. So on the one hand, you have helped me, you have helped all of us get up to speed on some matters. You know, I came with a lay interest. I have a better understanding of the situation now. So that I'm grateful. Now, on the other hand, the challenge or the question I'd like to give back to you is, given the complexity and the enormity of the issue, what is your expectation from this class? What is your expectation from each of us? You know, what is it that we can do? You know, I'm a student of science. I'm an engineer. I believe in critical mass. I believe in, you know, impact. So, you know, it's not just about talking. It's not just about, you know, doing a bit. Yes, each case we help, it makes a difference. But what is your expectation from all of us here, from others who are in civil society, in the development sector, who are dealing with women, with children, with young people? that's what I'd like to give back as my question to you. Thank you.
I think first of all that those who are on Zoom, they are not the only one who are part of the course. The people join on Facebook Live, on Spotify, on blog, on this one, what is it called? Podcast, and videos are shared, which are also very largely used throughout the country because they are on public domain. So that is why the reach of the course is very. All the courses on gender-based violence are on public demand. It is people who demanded that we wanted the women's. So the first cohort, we had more than 70 this thing. Then it was 50. Then again, but this is the time of exam. And also now during lockdown, the number of people who could join as compared to that now, only working people, they can't join during the day. And that's why this time of 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. was this thing. So a lot of communication goes before the course is launched, and this is the fourth cohort. But main thing is that reach is not limited. It is most of wherever I go in India, people are using these videos because most of the literature by the universities or by the publishing houses is so difficult to get. They are all password protected. While the audiovisual material as well as the PDF file, because even after the course, event outcome report will be prepared, and in which each and every session, the detailed research session, along with the link of the program will be shared. So that way the reach is high, reach will be high. The whole demographics of this course are those who have joined in the earlier cohorts also. They are journalists, research scholars, aspirants for UPSC, MPSC exams, and also the teachers and students, both undergraduate. So they are the ones who are going to be the ambassadors of the course. They are the ones who are taking the message. Resource persons are already in the organization which are involved in fighting against gender-based violence through their institutions, in the legal field, in the direct intervention and handholding of the survivors, and also doing a lot of advocacy. So that has been the composition of the participants and listening. But I think those who have joined the course, I think their duty is to mainly join the whole process of bringing transformative change in the mindset, wherever you are, whatever may be your socio-cultural or economic or political location. You have to, in the earlier cohort, we had a head of the women's wing of political party, and she felt because of the personal experiences that she had, and she had joined, and she says all these things she's going to bring in your party's manifesto and even the inner debates, because all parties, they have their internal camps and their study circles and all. So in that she would bring it up. So I think thing is that this is not just a knowledge for knowledge sake, but just an intellectual exercise. It has a direct commitment to the action. So praxis are extremely important as the theory, So, but one thing is that once you get the theory, when you can situate the issue in a larger context, see the interconnections, it really helps you to come up with the long-term strategy and the day-to-day tactics. So I think with this, I feel quite inspired, and also the kind of feedback that we receive and the reach. So that's one thing which I like with the IMPRI platform, that whatever knowledge products are created, they are in public domain, easily accessible. One click and you get everything. So that's why I feel that the effort which I'm putting in, and all my friends who we invite to conduct the session, they do it mainly because of the reach and the reaching out that is possible through such courses.
Thank you, ma'am. And thank you to all the participants who shared their feedback with us. Please note that we have shared the feedback form to your respective emails. Kindly fill it and share any more further insights with us. With this, we come to the end of the third cohort of Ending Gender-Based Violence, Challenges and Responses, an online National Autumn School program, a 4-week online immersive certificate training course. I, Srishti Stuti, researcher at IMPRI, Impact and Policy Research Institute, would now like to propose the formal vote of thanks on behalf of the Gender Impact Studies Center at IMPRI, New Delhi. We are grateful to our chair and experts for the final day of this program for taking their valuable time out for us and for sharing with us their knowledge and perspectives on addressing gender-based violence. We thank all our participants who have raised pertinent questions and actively participated in today's deliberations. Readings for the session have been shared in your email, and a video of the session will also be shared with you for learning. Additionally, do fill up the feedback form to ensure that IMPRI continues to organize future events which cater to your academic interests and pursuits. We are grateful if you're watching us later on YouTube, listening to us on our various podcasts, or reading our publications. We hope you continue to join us in the future for IMPRI Web Policy Talks and Web Policy Learning events. Wishing you all a good evening. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all.